Hello folks and welcome back. Today we are once again looking at the Pittsburgh Regional Championships. Today we are into round number 2 and we have a matchup between Toler Webb and Grant Laird here. So we got a little glimpse of the team preview here. Both of these names relatively popular in the Pokemon community, or at least somewhat well known if you keep up with the VGC scene. And we have a Porygon 2 here for the side of Toler Webb. This is likely going to be a bulkier Porygon 2, but it is that terrifying Tera Blast Porygon 2. We'll talk about that in a second. Terrifying Tera Blast Porygon 2 with the Eviolite, Download, Tera Blast, Ice Beam, Recover, and a Trick Room. Goldengo with the Tera Dragon, Life Orb, good as gold, Make It Rain, Shadow Ball, Nasty Plot, and Protect. Incineroar here with the Tera Water Safety Goggles, Intimidate, Knockoff, Flare Blitz, Parting Shot, and Fake Out. Flamigo with the Tera Ghost, Focus Sash, Scrappy, Close Combat, Brave Bird, Wide Guard, and Protect. Not a super common Pokemon, but this thing can put out a lot of damage. Ursaluna with the Tera Ghost, Flame Orb, Guts, Facade, Headlong Rush, Earthquake, and Protect. Super standard. And Amoonguss with the Tera Water, Citrus Berry, Regenerator, Spore, Rage Powder, Pollen Puff, and Sludge Bomb as the damage move of choice. The Porygon 2 here is an incredibly interesting Pokemon. This is something that Marco Silva's Sun team was running a lot. It's a more offensive Porygon 2 than you might anticipate. I mean, that Terrifying Tera Blast really provides a lot of additional coverage, does great work into opposing dark types. You get a lot of damage off into like Incineroar, into King Gambit that you otherwise would have a lot of trouble with. So this Porygon 2 can really do a lot of work, but it's not paired with a lot of the things that like you would normally expect. Ursaluna is a good Trick Room sweeper, but normally we would see something like Torkoal to really round things out. On the other side of things here for Grant Laird, we have Sneasel, Goldengo, Rillaboom, Hisuian, Arcanine, Alolan Ninetales, and Dragonite. Super standard team, just swapping out your Intimidate user. Sneasel here is Tera Ghost with the White Herb Unburden, Close Combat, Dire Claw, Coaching, and Detect. If it gets a stat drop, it heals it off. Or well, resets it. Goldengo with the Tera Water, Grassy Seed, good as gold, Make It Rain, Shadow Ball, Protect, and Nasty Plot. Very interesting there, paired with the Rillaboom with that Terrafire, Assault Vest, and Grassy Surge to trigger the Grassy Seed. Fake Out, Grassy Glide, Drum beating the lower opponent's speed and high horsepower. Hisuian Arcanine here has the Intimidate user, a little bit more offensive version with Tera Water, Clear Amulet to stop its stats from getting reduced. Intimidate, Rock Slide, Flare Blitz, Extreme Speed, and Protect. Alolan Ninetales here with the Tera Ghost, Focus Sash, Snowstorm to set the snow, Blizzard, Icy Wind, Encore, and Aurora Veil. Encore, the utility movement system like Disable here. And then Dragonite to round things out with the Tera Ground Loaded Dice, Multi-Scale, Scale Shot, Tailwind, Stomping Tantrum, and Protect. A lot of times you might see the Tera Normal Dragonite with Extreme Speed, but of course we do see the Stomping Tantrum here. And then the Ninetales as well, kind of an all-in-one damage, disruption, defensive Pokemon with the Aurora Veil, with the Encore, Icy Wind, and Blizzard. It's really, really flexible Pokemon. I've liked seeing it more and more as this regulation goes on, and it shows just how interesting of a Pokemon it really is. A lot of times, I think early in Regulation G and even at the start of Scarlet and Violet, Alolan Ninetales for the most part was really just something as like, okay, well, you set this for like a Slush Rush user or a Snow Cloak user, but now Alolan Ninetales really is kind of its own machine, very similar to how like a Kyogre is in many ways. So I'm very interested to see how it does in this matchup. We see Goldengo and that Alolan Ninetales for Grant Laird, and we see the Flamigo and Goldengo for Toler Webb. Now, this is incredibly important. Both these Goldengos are going to be pretty strong. Grant Laird's is going to be a little bit more defensive with that Grassy Seed once it triggers. Toler Webb is going to have some more offensive pressure with that Life Orb, but whichever one is faster potentially here could have big implications for the rest of the set. We could also get speed ties here, which if the players do want to opt into that, they're taking a little bit of a 50-50 to see who would, come out on top. And we could also see defensive Teras from both of these Pokemon. Goldengo for Grant is not necessarily under the most pressure, but you do have this Alolan Ninetales right now with the Focus Sash that it really does not want to have to deal with. And we do see the Protect from the Goldengo, but that is not going to happen from the Alolan Ninetales. It doesn't have it, but it goes for the Encore here. But no move has been used so far. Very interesting. Flamigo goes for Close Combat. That means Alolan Ninetales is the fastest thing on the field. Encore is a very interesting move. Shadow Ball comes out from Toler Webb's Goldengo. They both go into the Protect there, so they don't do anything. And Grant's Encore is ineffective. I wonder if Grant was expecting Flamigo to be faster than Alolan Ninetales, potentially. The Goldengo certainly wouldn't be, and Grant would definitely know that. So I'm interested in that choice of move. That's the only thing I can think of is that Grant was anticipating the Flamigo to move faster. Goldengo does swap out now. Speaking of, it's immune to Encore as it does have that good as gold ability. And Porygon 2 makes its way onto the battlefield now. So this is a little bit more of an offensive Pokemon. Tera Blast, Ice Beam, even Terrifying Tera Blast don't do a lot into Goldengo here, notably. And neither does this Flamigo. Like, Close Combat does still hit with Scrappy, but with this Tera Water, Grant Laird is going to be in a pretty good spot, all things considered. And now with that Goldengo off the field for Toler Webb, Ninetales gets to do kind of whatever it wants. Icy Wind comes through Porygon 2 does avoid the attack. That is going to be somewhat relevant here, but Flamigo takes super effective damage from that Icy Wind, and it drops its speed. So even if it was going to move before Gholdengo previously, it is not going to now. And Shadow Ball comes through. This should be enough to knock it out. It is a critical hit, but I don't know if that was going to matter. Gholdengo, like we said before, is incredibly strong. Porygon 2 did get a safe switch in here. It is now chilling on the battlefield, but notably for Toler Webb, bringing in the Ursaluna here does not feel great. It is going to take a lot of damage. It is super weak to Alola Ninetales right now, and you could try to Terra away from that into Terra fighting, but then you're still likely going to be taking a lot of damage, and since you're relatively slow, you're going to have to go for a Protect on this turn. That's going to allow Porygon 2 to get doubled up into, though, and that's just not going to be a good feeling. Again, and Make It Rain plus a Blizzard here could do a lot of damage into Porygon 2. It is still a bulky Pokemon, but it's just not quite as bulky as your usual Trick Room Porygon 2 setters, so it definitely, I think there is a world where it could be going down to a Make It Rain plus Blizzard, which is not a world you want to be in if you are Toler Webb, because at the same time, you have to protect the Ursaluna on this turn, because Ursaluna, unless you Terra, and even if you do Terra, still probably might be going down to a Make It Rain plus Blizzard. If you are Grant Laird here, I don't think you have any reason to not click that. The only thing might be if you are worried that Porygon 2 is going to survive and Trick Room is going to go up, that you might be in a really bad spot after that. But even then, Alola Ninetales is still probably going to be pretty good into this matchup. Aurora Veil, actually, I like this from Grant. You're going to get Make It Rain out. You're going to get some good damage. Toler is going to be forced on the back foot and is almost guaranteed going to try to protect the, nasty plot instead for the Gholdengo, protect the Ursaluna, but Toler Webb goes on the offensive. I think this is smart from Toler Webb. You have to try to get something done. So you get some additional chip damage out onto these Pokemon. You get Trick Room up with Porygon 2. You now have Guts triggered, so your attack stat is much higher. Now you're like looking at that damage before from the Ursaluna with Earthquake. I don't think you're KOing anything with Earthquake. You probably could with Facade at this point. And you probably could KO something with a combination of Earthquake and Porygon 2 damage. But I don't know if you're going to have quite enough. I don't think you'd be able to KO both Pokemon, and that is definitely the problem. You could still Terrasilize if you are Toler. You're still taking super effective Blizzard damage unless you want to try to take out Ninetales from this point. The Focus Sash is down, so if you're able to get some bigger damage off into it, you still might be able to take it out in one shot from here. Gholdengo, though, still feeling relatively strong for Grant, and right now, Porygon 2 is not in the best spot in terms of getting damage out. Terra Blast, though, is still an effective move, can still do some good work. We do see Gholdengo go for the Protect here. Incredibly bold from Grant. Maybe just willing to sacrifice this Ninetales if it does indeed get targeted, and allowing this Gholdengo to just stay on the field while you potentially bring in something like a Hisuian Arcanine or I believe a Rillaboom to get Fake Out Pressure alive. I like that move from Grant, but with that Protect, the Protect takes both of those hits. Porygon 2 and Ursaluna go down to about half HP. Ursaluna is going to go down to just below half HP thanks to the burn. So very good turn from Grant here. A very good call on that Protect from the Gholdengo, being willing to sacrifice the Ninetales potentially there. But with Ninetales staying up, you do still have some more damage. Ursaluna should be going down to another Blizzard plus burn damage on this next turn. Gholdengo could still swap out into a Rillaboom. You're much more defensive. You can tank some damage, and then Alola Ninetales can still get more work done. Now, the problem, well, actually, it's not even that much of a problem. Ooh, actually, Grant withdraws the Ninetales, leaving Gholdengo on the battlefield here and bringing in Arcanine. Okay, so brings in Arcanine instead, does get an Intimidate off. Arcanine is incredibly weak to Earthquake here, 4 times effective. I would, even with that Intimidate, I think Arcanine is probably going down, and we do finally see that Terrasilization from Toler Webb here. I think that is going to be on that Ursaluna going into Terra Ghost here, not Terra Fighting. I was looking at the Porygon 2, into Terra Ghost here. So would potentially take super effective Shadow Ball damage, but no longer is weak to that Blizzard, which is big. Facade comes through, and it does go into Gholdengo, which doesn't take it down, but Terra Blast comes in and does the cleanup work there. All right. Overall, for Toler Webb, you get a KO now, but you have not gotten enough work done into the rest of Grant Laird's team to really feel comfortable. Your Ursaluna is still going to be taking chip damage turn over turn. Notably, Arcanine's extreme speed is not going to affect the Ursaluna. Grant did swap out the Ninetales here right before the snow went down, so Ninetales can come back in potentially, but it is just going to be the Rillaboom coming in now with that Fake Out Pressure active. So Grassy Surge triggered. That does mean, well, actually Gholdengo already went down, so the Grassy Seed isn't going to trigger from that, but that does mean you have Fake Out Pressure from Rillaboom. Both Ursaluna and Porygon 2 don't really want to deal with it. You might want to play a little bit more defensively here if you are Toler Webb, either swapping the, or actually Fake Out is not applicable on to the Ursaluna thanks to that Ghost Tear that just happened. So Ursaluna is still relatively free to move. It's not going to get hit by Extreme Speed either. Earthquake's damage does get mitigated due to the grassy terrain, so Headlong Rush and Facade are really your options if you are Toler right now. And you're not completely out of this. Porygon 2 likely to get hit by Fake Out, potentially likely to get hit by Extreme Speed as well. Arcanine still just not in a great spot to really tank a Headlong Rush unless Grant wants to go for unless Grant wants to go for a Terastallization, which he cannot do in this game. So Arcanine does just go for the Protect here. Grant doing a good job of stalling out Trick Room turns. This is either the last one or there is one more. Fake Out into the Porygon 2 guarantees that it can't move. Headlong Rush comes through from the Ursaluna, goes into the Protect in the Arcanine. So no damage really coming out from Toler on this turn here, and just a couple more ticks of burn for Ursaluna. Does get a little bit mitigated by the grassy terrain, which is nice, but overall actually it does the exact same. All right, wonderful. So Toler Webb, both Pokemon below half HP. Goldengo still at full HP. You can still win the game with just a Goldengo, but I think your win condition is that you have to KO the Arcanine. Arcanine can do so much work into Goldengo with Flare Blitz that you are going to be in a very, very tough spot if you cannot take out the Arcanine before Goldengo makes its way back out onto the battlefield. Notably, Ninetales still being in the back for Grant Laird is the fastest Pokemon that is going to, or is the fastest Pokemon in this match and can still put in a lot of work. Aurora Veil doing numbers for Grant for this game so far. Does only have a turn or two left, which is going to be pretty notable, but for right now, Grant does still have a pretty safe HP advantage that's going to be hard for Toler to break through, even with that Ursaluna. We actually see Ursaluna swapping out right now. Goldengo coming in for Toler Webb. Not a safe switch in right now. There could be a ton of damage coming into the spot. Grant, though, wants to switch out the Rillaboom and bring the Ninetales back onto the battlefield. That is exactly what we see. So, Snow is going to come back. That means Blizzard is fully accurate again. That means Ninetales Special Defense is boosted once more. Extreme Speed goes into the Porygon 2, does not do very much damage, and Porygon 2 gets to go for Recover. So, all of that work, getting that damage down, Porygon 2 heals up to just below half HP, and with Grassy Terrain, heals up basically all the way there. Ninetales gets some healing as well, and Aurora Veil wears off right as we get to the end of Trick Room. So, for Grant, the question becomes, do you want to set up Aurora Veil again, or do you want to get aggressive? If you're Toler, I think you might be able to read that Aurora Veil is coming back up. That has been pretty big for Grant so far, and Arcanine can still get some good damage out, but right now, it's not feeling as good into either of these Pokemon. Close Combat is still an option into the Porygon 2. Flare Blitz is still certainly an option into that Goldengo slot, even if Ursaluna comes in. Ooh, Close Combat into Porygon 2 would actually be really sweet if Grant was able to call this that Ursaluna makes its way onto the battlefield now, because Toler Webb would feel great about that going into a Ghost-type Pokemon. All right, Goldengo does go for Protect here. You're feeling relatively good about that. Encore comes through again for Grant Laird, but fails once more. Flare Blitz was going into Goldengo, but does not hit the mark. So, Toler Webb getting a little bit of a sense of what Grant wanted to go for here. Flare Blitz on the Arcanine. Arcanine is a relatively fast Pokemon. I don't quite know if this Arcanine outspeeds this Goldengo. I'd be a little bit surprised if it didn't. This Arcanine is incredibly fast. And now, Toler Webb has Ursaluna on the field that is pressure, but Ninetales can still do damage. Arcanine does still have damage with Rock Slide as well. It's not very effective into the Goldengo, but it could still get some work done. And even if Arcanine does go down, Rillaboom is in the back with high horsepower. But Toler Webb, again, really needs to be careful with this Goldengo as long as Arcanine is up and on the field. Porygon 2 makes its way back out now. Toler Webb just going through a lot of rotations. But the thing is, though, for Toler Webb, swapping out this much does not win you the game. You have to be able to attack, and when you aren't able to get attacking moves off, you're just going to lose HP turn over turn. Ursaluna does go down into the red here, but does get an attack off. It is going to be that Headlong Rush. This is going to do super effective damage into the Arcanine, which does take it down, but this is going to be pretty big because Ursaluna is going to take burn damage for these next couple of turns. Grassy Terrain should be fading in a turn or two. Porygon 2 still feeling all right. Ninetales, though, still a fast Pokemon on the field and is going to be able to get more than enough damage off KO Ursaluna and get some good damage into the Porygon 2 as well. Burn takes Ursaluna back down to 27 HP, and Rillaboom is going to be coming out for Grant Laird. Toler Webb does still have a Pokemon lead right now, but I really don't feel that good about it, all things considered. Ursaluna and Porygon 2 are in really rough shape. Right now, Grant does not have to prioritize a Grassy Glide or anything into the Ursaluna. You can just go for Blizzard on the Ninetales since it is fully accurate, and then Rillaboom can go for a potential Grassy Glide or even just a Wood Hammer or High Horsepower into the Porygon 2 slot. That should do more than enough damage and force Toler Webb to bring in the Gholdengo one way or another. And again, Ninetales can continue to just click Blizzard in that spot. Rillaboom can continue to click High Horsepower. Rillaboom is still at full HP, and it still has the Assault Vest, so it's going to be taking Make It Rain or Shadow Balls incredibly well. Ursaluna does indeed swap out here. This is going to be Gholdengo coming back onto the battlefield here, but it's going to be coming into at least a Blizzard, which it's not going to be super effective. It's not going to be very effective, but it's still going to be good damage. Ninetales is not a Pokemon to scoff at. Okay, well, never mind. Maybe it didn't do that good of damage, but Drum Beating comes through now for the Rillaboom into the Porygon 2. Does more than enough damage to take it out. Porygon 2 goes down. That's going to be Ursaluna coming back onto the battlefield. Gholdengo has made its way out, but it has already taken some damage. And a lot of times when Pokemon are EV'd to survive attacks, which I would not be surprised if Gholdengo is EV'd to try to survive a Rillaboom High Horsepower, it is at a very minimal amount of HP most of the time, because usually it's going to be a clean one-hit KO. A lot of times it's a clean one-hit KO. So especially if this is an aggressive Rillaboom, Gholdengo is under a lot of threat right now. The threat of another Blizzard plus a Earth or High Horsepower into that Gholdengo could just about wrap things up. Ursaluna does go for the Protect here. It is going to take burn damage, and there's no more grassy terrain right now, so it's not going to be recovering any more health. It gets maybe one more turn to get damage off. Blizzard comes through. It's going to chip in to the Gholdengo, taking it down to about 3/4 of its HP here. Rillaboom does get the High Horsepower off, and it's faster, and Gholdengo does just barely survive that. That is huge. Make It Rain comes through. It does take out the Ninetales, and Rillaboom goes low, down to, or not that low, but down to about half HP. So Gholdengo down to 9 HP. This should take it out with the Life Orb, though. Yeah, Life Orb takes it down. And now Ursaluna is the last thing on the battlefield, but it is going to be slower than the Rillaboom here. So Toler Webb is going to have to reconsider for game number 2 what his options are. So even though Rillaboom did not fully get the KO, getting it into that Life Orb range is just as effective, especially when you are already faster than this opposing Ursaluna. Drum Beating comes through, guarantees the KO one way or another on that Ursaluna, and Grant Laird wins game number 1. A tough game, I think, for Toler in that spot. Ninetales, part of it is just Ninetales is a really good Pokemon. You have to deal with Aurora Veil, you have to deal with good damage from Blizzard, you have to deal with speed control from Icy Wind. Those couple of Encores felt a little bit awkward from Grant. That first turn one, again, I think he was anticipating that Flamigo was going to be the faster Pokemon there, which tells you something a little bit about how Toler Webb has trained some of these, like what he wants to outspeed and what he doesn't. The big thing though for Toler Webb is, I understand the defensive play, I understand the defensive pivoting, but when you're just getting smacked around and you need to take KOs at a relatively quick pace, especially some specific ones like against that Arcanine, pivoting out too much can just give your opponent too much time to get chip damage out, to weaken your Pokemon, especially when you have like Ursaluna that's burned. It's going to be continually taking chip damage instead of healing up from Grassy Terrain like your opponent's Pokemon are. You're really going to be on the back foot if you aren't able to stay aggressive and match the aggression that your opponent is putting out. So coming into game number 2 here, if you are Toler Webb, being a little bit more proactive and really trying to lay out some haymakers, like even if you have to sacrifice another Pokemon or two, when you have a Pokemon lead, go for it. Get some big damage out. And rely on that Porygon 2 damage. Fire off some more Terra Blasts. It'll be great. All right, let's get into it. Game number 2. Toler Webb, Grant Laird in round 2 of the Pittsburgh Regional Championships. Grant Laird leads the same thing, as does Toler Webb. Gholdengo versus Gholdengo. Ninetales versus Flamigo. So I doubt we're going to see the Encore on this turn. I think that's relatively clear. Toler Webb could go for a bit of a different move here. Grant Laird did not go for a defensive play on the Ninetales, and again, he cannot go for a defensive play on the Ninetales. Make It Rain here will be super effective, should do plenty of work, but notably Toler's Pokemon are both going to be weak. Toler's Pokemon are both going to get hit by any damage that Ninetales comes through. However, we do see, and I think I realize why Grant wanted to go for the Encore now, and I apologize because now I seem like an idiot. Flamigo has Wide Guard. Flamigo can block Make It Rain, Blizzard, and Icy Wind. 3 of the moves that Grant has, some of the best moves that Grant has, and Flamigo goes for the wide guard now. Toler Webb even saw the encore previously from the Alolan Ninetales, and that's exactly, okay, all right, you know what, never mind, Grant Laird is a genius. Grant Laird's a genius. That makes a ton of sense. Now Flamigo is trapped into wide guard, can only use wide guard, and Nasty Plot comes through from the Goldengo, but if Grant goes for a Shadow Ball from his own Goldengo, that will do super effect damage. Never mind, it's Nasty Plot for Nasty Plot. Notably though, Toler Webb, we see a little bit of frustration there, I think. But Toler Webb's Goldengo did go first. That is relevant. Make It Rain and Shadow Ball, both great moves here. Shadow Ball, though, into Grant's Goldengo should do plenty of work. You could go for a Terastallization to play defensively. You could go for Make It Rain to get more damage out. You could go for Shadow Ball to try to KO Grant's Goldengo here. Even without super effective damage, I think it just might do it. Now, for Toler, Flamigo going for wide guard is honestly not the worst thing in the world, I think, at this point, but it's not going to be doing all of that much in the long term, and we do see Toler actually want to switch it out. Now, a big thing is that Ninetales is not going to be going down on this turn. Even if Make It Rain comes through, even if it's 4 times effective, Ninetales is still going to be just, well, not fine, but it's going to be at 1 HP. It's going to be sticking around no matter what. We do see the Terastallization coming through. I do believe this is Grant's Goldengo going for that Terra Water, indeed. So it is not going to be taking super effective damage from a Shadow Ball, but it could still potentially go down to a Shadow Ball, I think. Aurora Veil comes through there from the Ninetales. Now I think you're going to be relatively safe. I do think it is Make It Rain, though, that Toler has selected here to get that damage out, and that is exactly what it is. Ninetales down to the Focus Sash, and Goldengo down to about 2/3 of its HP. The Aurora Veil really putting in work. Now, Ninetales with the Focus Sash, feeling pretty good. Porygon 2, though, is going to be under quite a bit of pressure here. Again, both these Goldengos do have Nasty Plot triggered, and Grant Laird does get the Shadow Ball off. This should be more than enough to take out Toler's Goldengo. So Grant, once again, with an early Pokemon lead, getting rid of Toler's Goldengo early. Alolan Ninetales is pretty low here thanks to that Goldengo, which doesn't feel great, and Flamigo does get to come back out on it to the battlefield. Wide guard, ability to click wide guard, once again active. And now, let's be clear here, if you are Toler Webb, you have a Porygon 2 here that can do some work, right? Goldengo is no longer resistant to your Terra Blasts. You can get damage out. You can KO the Ninetales potentially with your Porygon 2. I would not be shocked if Porygon 2 could put in a ton of work right now. We do see the Goldengo go for Protect, and this is going to stop any damage from coming through, either a close combat or a Terra Blast for potential from the Porygon 2. Flamigo does survive on 1 HP here, notably. Blizzard coming through from the Alolan Ninetales. Grant, a freeze as well. Toler Webb not clicking that wide guard. Grant Laird calling it out. And Flamigo thaws out anyways from the freeze. It just doesn't matter, but it's going into the Protect on the Goldengo anyways. So good amount of damage coming out from Grant, not a completely inconsequential freeze, and then a Trick Room from the Porygon 2. So the speeds are inverted. Porygon 2 is going to be the fastest thing on the battlefield now, and Flamigo should be moving after that. So Grant under quite a bit of pressure now, although Goldengo potentially could survive a mix of damage here from the Flamigo and Porygon 2 with this Aurora Veil being up. We could also see potentially Grant swap the Ninetales out and bring Rillaboom in, triggering that Grassy Seed to buff up this Goldengo against physical type moves even more. Now, if you are Toler, I think you are in a spot where you can play aggressively. You have to be worried about Grant or you can not play aggressively. You can swap proactively. Grant is in a spot where you might you might expect them to play a little bit riskier. You almost want to sacrifice this Ninetales, I think, again, if you are Grant. I think potentially that's what you wanted to do on the last turn. I think, again, that's kind of what you want to do on this turn if you can help it. We do see this Flamigo swap out, and I think last turn, this time around, we saw the Ninetales swap out before, but this time, Grant just says, okay, we'll let the Ninetales go. Goldengo still on the battlefield, and Porygon 2 could only take out one of those Pokemon. Make It Rain comes through. This is going to be some good damage. Porygon 2 and Ursaluna both take a ton of damage right here. That does lower Goldengo's special attack, but Ursaluna now only has a few turns that it can survive on the battlefield with this Flame Orb triggering. Now, Grant, okay, I was going to say, that only really counts if Grant doesn't send out Rillaboom, but Rillaboom does come through. Fake Out Pressure is active, but so is Grassy Glide. Ursaluna doesn't really want to have to deal with either of those. Porygon 2 does have a super effective Ice Beam into the Rillaboom right now, but all things considered, I don't think that is going to be enough to stop Rillaboom from getting enough good damage out onto the Ursaluna or even the Porygon 2 over these next couple of turns. Grassy Glide is a phenomenal move. Having priority right now feels great in Trick Room. So for Toler Webb, how much damage can you do with this Ursaluna in a couple of turns? You saw in the previous games that Facade from this point should be able to take out Gholdengo. The question becomes, if you don't protect, is Rillaboom just going to KO you with a Grassy Glide? This Rillaboom does seem to be pretty strong. It does seem to be pretty physically trained. We see the Terastallization coming through. You won't be taking super effective grass type damage. You are a ghost type now. This is your best bet. You guarantee that you're not going to get hit by Fake Out, but honestly, if you're a Grant, I don't think you click Fake Out anyways. You just go for that Grassy Glide, and it does more than enough damage. Ursaluna goes down. Porygon 2 here, still going to be your last real chance at victory. How much damage can it do, and who is it targeting is the big question. Just goes for the recover again as Toler Webb trying to outlast this Gholdengo here, but it goes for Nasty Plot this time around, upping it up now to +3 for your potential Make It Rain. The snow does stop, although the Ninetales is down, but now Grant is honestly in a phenomenal position. In the previous game, Grant was the one that was down 2 to 3 Pokemon, and now Toler is the one with 2. So Toler Webb, bring out the Flamigo at 1 HP. It is incredibly vulnerable to Grassy Glide right now, and Porygon 2 has to do it all. But unfortunately, I don't think Porygon 2 is going to feel great about taking a +3 Make It Rain plus a high horsepower or a drum beating or a Grassy Glide. This is an incredibly poor spot for Toler Webb, and not taking out this Gholdengo, not being, not really going aggressive in that Gholdengo slot is really, really hurting in this game number 2. We do see the Flamigo go for Protect right now, trying to make it through, trying to survive. It does block the Grassy Glide, but I feel like that is only delaying the inevitable. Ice Beam comes through from Porygon 2. This is going to do a decent amount of damage. It does about a quarter of Rillaboom's HP, but not enough. And Gholdengo goes for Nasty Plot again for Grant here. This is +5 Gholdengo now. If Porygon 2 wasn't going to be shaking in its boots before, it certainly is now. Aurora Veil does wear off, so you get a little bit more damage now from this Porygon 2 potentially. Ice Beam does feel great. If you're Toler Webb, maybe you go for Wide Guard, try to stop the Make It Rain at this point. And again, just really try to put all of your faith in that Porygon 2, but I don't think that it is going to matter in the long run. Porygon 2's Ice Beams are still going to be big into Rillaboom. Ice Beam into Gholdengo, I just don't think is going to get enough work done. I think you have to hope for a freeze. The Protect does come through from the Flamigo, but it doesn't do enough. Grassy Glide takes it out. Flamigo is down, and Porygon 2 in a 1v3. I love this Pokemon. I think this Pokemon is great and can absolutely win games just about on its own, but I don't think that this is the position that I am generally thinking about when I think of Porygon 2 winning games on its own. A +5 Make It Rain comes out and absolutely obliterates this poor duck Pokemon. And Grant Laird moving on to 2-0 at Pittsburgh. That is a pretty tough matchup for Toler Webb there. The Encore from Alola Ninetales is just incredibly annoying and incredibly frustrating. We did see, kind of just call it, play around it in previous game in the previous game, but in this one, I think there were a couple times where, all right. For Toler Webb, I think using Porygon 2 to set up Trick Room as proactively that much, I don't know if it works as well when you don't have these other like mid-speed tailwind modes paired with it like Marco Silva has on Marco Silva's Sun Team, which I'm doing a video about in like a couple of weeks, so keep an eye out for it. It'll be coming out like next week, I think a week from today. But the Porygon 2 on Marco Silva's Sun Team, which most people are adopting, like a more offensive Porygon 2, this Terrafighting Terrablast Porygon 2 is what a lot of people are adopting on their teams with a higher special attack stat. It does really well because you can also put Jump Up next to it or a Tailwind Setter next to it and speed it up. You can also have a mid-speed Ursaluna that can both outspeed or underspeed Pokemon depending on what you need. So you're a lot more flexible there. You also have really good answers into things like Ninetales. You have really good weather control with both Jumpluff and Torkoal. So Porygon 2 really fits in nicely there because it is hard to deal with Porygon 2 in traditional manners, which is generally just ignoring it, because all the other Pokemon apply pressure and create a good environment for Porygon 2 that Porygon 2 can also set up for them. For Toler Webb here, you really only have the Trick Room mode. You don't have Tailwind, you don't have a great fast mode, and so that miscellaneous threat of Porygon 2 being able to potentially set up Trick Room, but not necessarily having to, it allows Porygon 2 to get more damage out and get up and apply more pressure to the opposing team. And this time around, that just wasn't there. So we'll be continuing on with round number 3 tomorrow, y'all. But until next time, be safe, be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.